Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into women's ice hockey at the college level. My guest today is Cara Morey. She is the head women's ice hockey coach at Princeton University, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Sure. So usually I start my guests where they went to college. So where'd you go to school?
I went to Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island.
All right. So let's just go back in time into your high school career. When did it all start for you that you knew that you were going to go on to college? And I guess, did you play at the college level?
Yes.
Okay, so was it freshman year of high school, senior year? When did it all start for you?
So I had a really unique path to U.S. college sports where I actually didn't even play hockey until I was 17 years old.
Wow.
So I played another game called ringette, which is a Canadian sport for girls. Back then, not many girls were playing ice hockey. It was a really male-dominated sport. So I played this game called ringette, and it was all girls, and I went to what's called the Canada Games, which is a little mini Olympics, and I got kicked out. I got kicked out for 5 games, suspension, and after that tournament, I represented Ontario. We were supposed to win. There was this really strange events, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to switch to hockey. I went as far as I could. In ringette, my dad loved hockey. I have 2 older brothers that play hockey, so I said, you know what, I'll give it a try. Ringette's on ice also, by the way, so it's a skating game, but very different.
Okay. Canadians would know what ringette
Canadians, yeah, it's slowly dying, but yes, it's getting taken over now by women's hockey. But I went to a team in London, Ontario, and at my first hockey tournament, this really passionate, energetic woman named Digit Murphy came up and said, "Hey, do you want to come play hockey at my school?" And I said, "Well, what school are you at?" And she said, "Brown." And I said, "Well, that's a color. I've never even heard of this." So my recruiting process was so strange because I didn't even know they had hockey in the United States. I didn't know it was a college sport. I didn't know what a recruiting trip was. I didn't know anything. This lady just kept calling me, and she said, "When are you going to come see my school?" And I said, I lived in a town of 1,000 people in Ontario.
Wow.
So I had barely been on an airplane before. So I said, where is it? And she said, "It's in Rhode Island." And I said, "Where's Rhode Island?" And I knew that I couldn't afford to go see the school. So she back then mailed me a plane ticket. And off I went for a weekend, but I didn't know what a recruiting trip was. I thought she was paying for everything out of her pocket. And I saw this school, and I saw these women playing hockey at an incredible level, and the campus was beautiful. And, I still didn't know if I would go to the U.S., but I felt like I needed to at that moment. But it wasn't until I was 19, because we had 5 years of high school, and I got my acceptance letter to Brown, and I said, okay, I guess I'll go to Brown.
So that was the only school then?
Yeah, I felt like I wasn't supposed to talk to other people, like it was wrong because I had gone to see her school. I didn't understand it. And I might have done things differently, but I think I ended up in the best place for me, which is what it's really
So now
about.
you're at Brown University.
Yep.
You're playing ice hockey there.
Yep.
What's it like? What's Brown University like?
College sports in general, it was amazing. It was, again, I'd only played on a girls' hockey team for 2 years before I went there. So you meet your best friends, you practice every day, you practice hard, you're with all these other girls that have the same vision as you, and you get to do the thing you love more than anything. And I got to go to a phenomenal school. I'd never heard of the Ivy League when I showed up. I also asked, "So where's the person that's going to write my exams for me?" And she said, "What?" I said, "I'm in America, playing a sport." And she's like, "Yeah, this isn't one of those schools." So I didn't know anything, and it was life-changing, just life-changing to be a part of that. I remember walking around campus one day going, how did I get here? I am the luckiest girl
That's great.
in the world.
So now you graduate?
Yeah.
How does one go from graduating Brown University to becoming the head women's ice hockey coach at Princeton University?
Again, I have a very unusual path to things. So I actually played field hockey and ice hockey at Brown, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do after, but I knew I loved coaching and teaching, but that wasn't really a profession when I was going through. It was a profession, so to speak, but it wasn't, you could hardly make a living doing it.
Yeah.
When you get the Ivy League degree, you feel this pressure to be doing something life-changing, and I do think coaching is life-changing, but again, it wasn't really a a job on my mind. I went back and trained with the Olympic team, and I was doing a master's in Canada. And then I had met my husband in college, and we got married 2 years after. And I actually just followed his career around for close to 10 years. So I was a stay-at-home mom for 8 years.
Wow.
And then when he stopped with his profession, I said, you know, it's my turn. I should find a job. And we were living in Arizona. And I saw online that a Princeton coaching job came up. And I applied and I got the job.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, you know, fast forward, kind of moved up through the second assistant to first assistant to associate head. And then when the head coach left last year, I got promoted to head coach.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's get into ice hockey at Princeton University. What type of students do you look for at Princeton University? How do you find these recruits?
We travel a lot. So this summer I was in all over the U.S., all over a lot of Canada, and actually in Sweden for a week. So where there was a lot of international players there. So we go to a lot of places looking, and we're really looking for the best hockey players first and foremost, because that's one, we want to win the national championship, and two, that's really all you can see when you're watching hockey, who are the best players. Once we kind of establish who we think are the top tier, then we try connecting with them and trying to figure out who they are as people. Mm-hmm. That's the second thing, is like, once we know they can play hockey, it's character first. Like, how do they interact with you on the phone? Mm-hmm. You know, what are their ambitions? What are their aspirations? And then from there, we have to obviously move on to the academic piece. Are they driven in school? So Princeton is a phenomenal place, and I think that most people could do very, very well there, but you have to care about your education. Mm-hmm. So if they sound like they really care and education's important to them, then I think they're a good candidate, before we even discuss what their actual grades are. And that's kind of how we take it step by step until we really kind of narrow it down to whether they'll be a good fit for our program or not.
So now, students that come to Princeton University, what is someone going to expect at Princeton University? How does it all start? Do they come in August, September? What's the process for a student at Princeton University?
So actually, our international freshmen are just arriving this week, so they'll be getting here tonight, tomorrow, the next day. But the rest of our veterans, returning players, they don't come until around September 8th. And we start pretty much right when the first day of classes start. So this year, September 12th, we'll hit the ground running. Hockey is supposed to be a winter sport, but our first official day is September 29th. Okay. So we only get about 2 weeks of preseason, and then we start right away.
So is there a big difference between men's ice hockey and women's ice hockey, or is it basically the same thing?
With the starting date and everything, they're about 2 weeks after us, so they get a little more time to kind of warm into it and get settled. We start 2 weeks earlier and then generally finish 2 weeks earlier, so a little bit of difference on the timing.
And how about the amount of games? Is it the same amount of games? Mm-hmm. Do you have games in the fall and the spring?
So we start, like I said, September 29th, we'll have 2 exhibition games. I think October 19th is our first legitimate, countable game. And, you know, depending on how well we do, it ends end of March with the Final Four. And the men, same amount of games. So Ivy League plays 29 games. You get 2 scrimmages at some point throughout there. Well, you get 1 scrimmage, and then if you play an international team, it's an exemption. So gotcha. 29 games is all we're allowed in the Ivy League, both men and women.
Okay. And then in the summer months, are they out on their own? Do they?
So in the summer months, it's really up to them. Some like to stay and do a course at Rutgers or somewhere, or they'll sometimes go home and train, or they'll do amazing internships all over the world. We've had players go all over, like Argentina, Vietnam, wow. South Africa, and do really cool internships or like philanthropic missions that are just amazing opportunities that Princeton provides. So they'll do that sometimes, but they always make their training a priority, and they come back in the fall ready to go because we don't have a very big preseason. So they know they have to be ready when they come back.
Wow. So where do you find the kids in high school? Is it U.S. high school? Is it Canadian high school? Is it these prep schools? Is it outside of high school? Is that where you're finding the kids?
We mostly watch their club hockey. So hockey is set up where There's a very strong club system through either USA Hockey or through Hockey Canada. And there's obviously little pockets that we would hit with Princeton. We're pretty heavy in Ontario. We're big in Minnesota. We're pretty heavy in New England. Most of the New England players will also play prep school hockey. And it's very different from state to state and country to country. For the most part, we go to some major tournaments and major showcases where all the top club teams come in. And that's where we do a lot of our evaluating. But, if we can drive down the road a couple hours and see a prep school game, we might do that. But I'd say the heavy bulk of our recruiting is in the club system.
Gotcha. Okay. And then grade-wise, they have to be at the top of their class? Can they be just an average student?
They have to be strong students. We don't really get valedictorians or number one in their class, but we get driven students. So more so than the actual GPA is the type of courses they're choosing. Are they choosing a difficult, rigorous path academically to challenge themselves, or are they taking a path where they can just get easy A's? We want the kids who are challenging themselves, who really value learning, and then they do really well. So the GPA is important, but it's a much bigger picture than just like, do I have straight A's? So most of our players do not have straight A's, but they do very well because they're extremely driven and they value it.
And skill level for women, for men, are they big, strong? Women, are they more petite? Is it more finesse? How does the game is the game the same as you see as the men, or?
It depends what game you're looking at. So I actually think of recruiting a little bit like dating. Like I might like a certain type and somebody else might like something different. So I might value, one of the things I value like speed and tenacity, and somebody might value finesse and skill. So it depends on really what does the head coach value. So, obviously we all say we value work ethic, and I certainly do. That means a lot to me. So the women's game is a very skilled game. It's a very fast game. It looks very similar to a men's game, except there's no full open ice body checks. Other than that, it's really quite similar. But that being said, Ron, the men's coach, might look for a different type of player than I look for. I do actually think we play a similar style, which is funny, but it really depends on there's no perfect size. So they always say, well, you can't teach size. So you might be drawn to look at, 5'10" girls who have a long wingspan, but there's also Kendall Coyne, who's one of the best players in the world, and she's maybe 4'11". So
the difference.
There's not really a prototype for women's hockey.
Yeah. So when they're at school, what can a student expect from you as the coach?
From me personally, they can expect high energy, high tempo. They can expect to be pushed probably a little further than they thought they could handle, and hopefully a demanding but caring environment where they feel like they can be themselves. I want them to feel like they can make mistakes, but the effort is non-negotiable.
Good. And study-wise, a lot of parents talk about, it's all about the sport, it's not about schooling. I know Princeton University is very high on schooling. So what's your say to the parents on that?
Yeah, not if you're looking at a school like Princeton or an Ivy League school, or honestly the majority of the women's hockey schools are quite academically focused. Women are not going to be pro hockey players, so that education needs to be at the forefront of every decision that they make, and that means it needs to be a priority. So we're very lucky that hockey can open some doors for us, but if you don't have the schooling to continue through that door, it's a problem. So you want to absolutely focus on your hockey only if it's like your passion and you love it. Focus on it because you love it, but you can't let your schoolwork slide in the process of it.
Now, study-wise, what are they looking at Princeton University to get into the school? Are they looking at kids that have to have everything up front, SAT scores, great SAT scores? What type of kids are you looking for that way as well?
The thing I love about Princeton and their admissions is that they're looking at the all-around candidate. So they don't just pin it on your GPA and your SAT. We want strong scores academically. We want to make sure they can handle the work when they get to Princeton, but they also take into account, well, this person is an expert in their craft, and can they give more to the campus culture? And can they give to the community as a whole? They don't want one prototype. If you took every just valedictorian with perfect scores, it would be a very homogeneous school and there would be no character there. So again, they're looking at the whole round applicant. What do you do outside? Maybe what do you do outside of even your sport? And it's hard now because there's, sports are year round and they're so time driven and the time commitment is so huge. Yeah. So they're asking a lot of them, but it's basically like, tell us who you are. Tell us why you fit here. And they look at the whole thing. So grades are important. Grades are important, but it's not the only thing they're looking at.
Now, everybody always talks about money at the school as well.
Yeah.
So Princeton University is very high in tuition. How does someone who wants to come to Princeton get in, and does Princeton help them with financial aid? Because I know that Princeton doesn't give out scholarships, so is there financial aid at the school? How does it all work for the student?
Yeah, this is my daily conversation with parents, right? There's a misconception that they see the sticker price at Princeton and that's what you pay. It's true we don't give athletic scholarships, so a lot of times I think, man, if we gave scholarships, we'd be so competitive, but I also understand the premise of why the Ivy League doesn't. And maybe it's because I was an Ivy League athlete, and now that I'm a coach in the Ivy League, I understand it. It really changes the power balance of the coach-athlete relationship. Like, they are students, and then they are student athletes. They're not just there for hockey, although it's still our priority because we love it. So financial aid is incredible at Princeton. It makes me so proud to work there when I know that the financial aid office really works with families, and they really just say, well, how much can you really afford to send? And they work with them on that. There's obviously a mathematical calculation and stuff and things they don't tell us because they don't want us to give them misinformation. But it's a conversation I have to have early on, because if you can believe this, in women's hockey, we have a roster size of maybe 22 to 24 athletes, and there are 18 full scholarships at every program I recruit against in the country. But somehow we've been very successful to convince them that the value of the Princeton education will pay back in the end. And we've done a good job where we don't generally lose our recruits based solely on financial.
Good.
Yeah.
So you talked about at the beginning visits. What does a student athlete look at in visits? Can they go to multiple schools to visit? How does the visits work?
So unfortunately in women's ice hockey, our recruiting became so accelerated that visits are almost non-existent now. So an official visit, they've changed all the rules. Have you heard about the new recruiting rules? Probably a little. So they changed the recruiting rules that no one can come on an official or unofficial visit until September 1 of junior year. And the reason that is because so many young kids were coming onto campus, meeting with coaches, seeing the locker room, and then committing, freshman year, 8th grade year. And in order to slow that down, they said, you may visit campus, but you're just going to go on a general admissions tour. You can't talk to the coaches. You can't see anything that's not open to the general public. Now that's starting September 1 junior year. But all juniors and pretty much all sophomores right now in women's hockey are committed. Every program has filled. So we will see this change in the next few years. And then junior year, they will come and you can go on 5 official visits, which means between junior and senior year. You can go on 5, meaning you can go visit 5 different schools of your choice, fully paid for. You get 48 hours on that campus. They can put you in the dorms, you eat in the dining hall, you go to class, you go to practice, you go to games, and you'd see what it's really like to be a student athlete. And I think it'll be great then because a lot of people have made their college choices without experiencing that. So you might get to the campus and it's very different from what you expected.
And an unofficial visit, I guess, is you can go any school and just
visit the schools. So the unofficial meaning, yes, you pay for it yourself to get there. Like official, we can fly them in and pay for it. Unofficial, it was always on their own dime and you could do that at any time. You can still go see campuses. Yeah. But you just can't have an athletics visit anymore.
Yeah, gotcha. And now, camps. Do you recommend that girls that are playing ice hockey do camps, summer camps, fall camps, spring camps, whatever they are?
I mean, I wish we would all take our skates off all summer long. I think that's actually best for the sport and for the athlete in general. But we're caught in this tough time of evaluation and exposure. And so unfortunately, if you really want to get seen and if you're really interested in a specific school, then I definitely recommend going to their camp, because it's the best way we can interact with you, see you on the ice, every day. Of course, it could hurt you because maybe we'll see flaws at the same time.
Sure.
But if you're really interested, I've found a couple recruits that have just showed up at my camp that I didn't know, and I really just enjoyed them. Their personality off the ice as much as work ethic on the ice, and found a spot for them. So I think they're important, even though I wish we could get rid of them.
Now, a girl that's at the high school level, and she's playing high school ice hockey, do you recommend that person should be doing club as well as maybe an extra year of high school, or these PG years that they call them?
I think it depends where you live. So if you live in the New Jersey area like we do, you probably want to find a good club team, because we're one of the only schools in New Jersey with women's ice hockey. So I don't think Minnesota is flying out here to watch New Jersey high school hockey. So if you can get on a good club team that can go to these major tournaments that we all show up to see, then you have a better shot of exposure and being recognized.
Interesting. Yeah, so that helps the student athlete out as well as the coaches.
Yeah, and the PG is a very interesting thing that's just started with our sport, and it's because with the early recruiting, some players have developed late and they didn't get noticed, and they might not have a spot available that year, but they say, well, you could come the following year, I have a spot if you're willing to do a PG year or a gap year. Some places call it a gap year. So it's becoming a little more common. It's especially more common with goaltenders, because you don't need a goaltender every year.
Yeah.
So you might say, okay, you love our school. Well, we don't have a goalie spot this year, but we have one next year, if you consider a PG year.
So that just started recently?
I'd say, in the last 4 or 5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
So
most
women
are
didn't have
true
that before.
freshmen. Yeah, most. You come the year you graduate, and if that program didn't have a spot, you looked at a different one.
So after college, do most women just go into the workplace, or is there just USA hockey and that's it? Or is there something that women can do after college?
Yeah, well, we've just started. There's 3 major pro leagues now, which are great. The NWHL, which is National Women's Hockey League, is a US-based league. We actually have the New York Riveters, or Metropolitan Riveters, right here, which 2 of our former players play for. And we have a league in Canada called the CWHL, Canadian Women's Hockey League, and there's a really good league in Sweden. So some of our players do. We have one of our grads this year going overseas. We have one pretty much every year. One goes overseas to play. Just you get a year in Europe, kind of exploring and doing the thing you love. Our Canadians will go home and play, but generally these leagues, they're not paying them a salary. They're paying them a stipend, but not salary, so they have to have full-time jobs and play.
So they do work somewhere.
They do work somewhere.
So would you say to everyone that's watching is you have to find a job somewhere after college?
Yes, and usually that's what brings a lot of our top players to us. So, this year we actually have the #1 recruit in the world. She's going to be starting as a freshman this year, and she had 30-something scholarship offers. She chose Princeton because she knows, even though she's probably slated to become an Olympian, that there's no real income for women's hockey players still. And she might stay involved in hockey. There will be opportunities for us as GM roles. Haley Wickenheiser, which is one of the best players to ever play, just got hired by the Maple Leafs, which is great for player development of NHL players. So there will be jobs for women in hockey, but they're pretty few and far between. So the education is so important to make sure that once you graduate, use hockey to open doors and get the best degree possible. So once you graduate, you can open even more doors for yourself.
So you see a lot of networking that goes on at the college level?
Yeah, and that's something we really work hard in our program specifically. We set up a career mentorship program where our past players are helping our future players with internships, with job interviews, with resume building, and just trying to help them, what do you want to be? Because we look at this like a lifetime commitment. You chose Princeton women's ice hockey, and we want to be there to support them even after the 4 years is done.
Great. So we're coming to the end of our show.
Oh, great.
And usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents and their daughters that want to go to Princeton University, play ice hockey? What advice would you like to give them?
Take a deep breath. I mean, right now we're at a crazy time in recruiting where I think parents are frantic. They're looking around at freshmen in the locker room that are all committing all over the place, and they feel this real urgency, and we all just need to take a deep breath and slow down and remember why these girls are playing the game and keep it focused on their daughters and what life skills they want to get out of hockey, and just relax. Like, everything that's meant to be will happen. You just have to be patient.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on the
Thank
show.
you.
Yeah, no problem. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.